Winter 1940, Manchuria. A prisoner is dragged from his cell into the biting cold. His arms are forced into a tub of ice-cold water and held there for hours. Eventually, his limbs are frozen solid. A Japanese officer strikes the man's arm with a cane. It makes a sound like a plank of wood. This is not a random act of cruelty. This is science. This is an experiment to determine the best way to treat frostbite. And the man is not a soldier. He is a log, a piece of human timber ready to be used and discarded. This was Unit 731, and this is the story of the darkest secret of World War II. The story of a place where science became evil and humans became monsters. Our story begins in 1931 with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. The region, rich in resources, became a puppet state called Manchukuo. But for one man, it was more than a conquest. It was an opportunity. That man was Lieutenant General Shirō Ishii, a brilliant, ambitious, and ruthless army physician and microbiologist. Ishii saw the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which banned biological warfare, not as a prohibition, but as proof. If the world was so afraid of germ weapons, he reasoned, it was because they worked. Manchuria was the perfect laboratory, isolated from Japan, with an endless supply of what Ishii's unit would come to call maruta, or logs. The local population, Chinese civilians, Russian refugees, captured partisans, were seen as assets with no cost. In 1936, with the blessing of Emperor Hirohito, Unit 731 was officially born. Its public name was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. Its cover story? A simple lumber mill. But inside this sprawling complex in Pingfang, near the city of Harbin, there were no logs of wood, only logs of men, women, and children. Over 3,000 staff, including Japan's top medical minds, were brought here, lured by unlimited funding and the forbidden promise of human experimentation. They built a state-of-the-art facility with laboratories, prisons, operating rooms, and crematoriums, a self-contained city of death designed for one purpose, to turn the deadliest diseases known to man into weapons of mass destruction. What happened inside Unit 731 defies imagination. The experiments were a catalog of human cruelty conducted with cold scientific precision. Prisoners were intentionally infected with the plague, cholera, anthrax, and typhoid, disguised as routine vaccinations. Their agonizing deaths were meticulously documented. Vivisection without anesthesia was common practice. Victims were dissected alive to study the effects of diseases on living organs. A former medical assistant testified that they would remove organs from conscious people who would scream until they bled to death on the operating table. Pregnant women were forcibly impregnated, then subjected to trauma and weapons tests. Their bodies were opened up to study the effects on the fetus. In the Frostbite experiments led by Yoshimura Hisato, they didn't just freeze limbs, they tested thawing methods, dousing them in boiling water, holding them over open flames. They discovered that the optimal temperature for treatment was water just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a piece of medical knowledge paid for with unimaginable suffering.
They tested the limits of human endurance. Prisoners were locked in high-pressure chambers until their eyes popped out, spun in giant centrifuges until they died from G-forces, deprived of food and water to see how long a human could survive. They even replaced a prisoner's blood with horse blood. And they tested weapons, flamethrowers on exposed skin, grenades at varying distances. They even had a gas chamber to test chemical agents. It is difficult to comprehend this level of organized cruelty. These were not the actions of a few rogue sadists. This was a state-sponsored program involving thousands of doctors, scientists, and soldiers. It forces us to ask a terrible question. How do ordinary people become capable of such evil? This is the kind of forgotten history we explore on WW2 War Files. If you believe these stories must be told so we never forget what humanity is capable of, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support ensures these dark chapters are not erased. By 1945, Unit 731 was a biological weapons factory. It could produce 300 kilograms of plague bacteria and nearly 700 kilograms of anthrax every single month. They developed ceramic bombs filled with plague-infected fleas, designed to be dropped from airplanes, spreading death on a massive scale. These weapons were not just theoretical, they were used. In Chinese cities like Ningbo and Shangdai, these bombs unleashed epidemics that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. In August 1945, the war was ending. The Soviet Union invaded Manchuria. For Unit 731, the final order was given: destroy the evidence. The massive complex was dynamited. The remaining prisoners were executed. Documents were burned, and the staff were given cyanide vials, told to commit suicide if captured. But Shirō Ishii had one last, horrifying card to play. As American forces arrived in Japan, Ishii and his top researchers negotiated a deal. They offered the United States something it desperately wanted: exclusive access to their years of research on human subjects, data that could never be ethically obtained. In exchange for this trove of horrific knowledge, the United States granted Ishii and his entire leadership team full immunity from prosecution for war crimes. While Nazi doctors were being tried at Nuremberg, the monsters of Unit 731 walked free. The Truman administration concealed the truth, classifying the evidence and even paying stipends to the former researchers. Shirō Ishii, the architect of it all, never spent a day in court. He died of throat cancer in 1959, a free man. Some justice came, but it was limited. In 1949, the Soviets held the Khabarovsk war crimes trials, sentencing 12 lower-level members of Unit 731 to prison, but the masterminds escaped. It wasn't until 2002 that the Tokyo District Court officially acknowledged that Japan had conducted biological warfare in China, holding the state responsible. But for decades, the story of Unit 731 was a ghost, a rumor, a footnote in the horrors of the war. It is a legacy of over 500,000 lives lost, of science twisted into a weapon of unimaginable terror, and of a chilling pact with the devil made in the name of national security. Unit 731 is not just a story about the past, it is a warning, a reminder that the line between progress and monstrosity can be terrifyingly thin, and that the pursuit of knowledge without a conscience can lead to the darkest places of the human soul.